Hi there, Pacha here from Balance Brands. So I want to talk a little bit about how to use your brand master guide. So once you have it, it doesn't just end up collecting dust on your shelf, because this is actually a toolbox and I want you to know how to use this toolbox after you put all this work into it. So let's take a look here. As you know, the first part of our brand master guide, the brand essence, is about internal use, right? So we figured out what our purpose is as a brand, our vision, our mission, how we're going to achieve that vision, and what our core values are. So how are we going to use these parts? The brand essence really has two purposes. The first one is about internal communication. So especially the part about your brand purpose and the vision you have, this is really important to create a company culture, if you will. Like, if you want to become a great leader, and that is, can be true for your brand as well. If you are if you're the business owner and you have people working for you, then you're the leader, okay? And if you want to make sure that they're not just on brand with everything they do, but they're also excited about coming to work, and they're believing in creating something that's bigger than themselves. That is what the vision is all about, right? It's something that's a little bit bigger, that's a little bit scary to think about. But if you communicate that purpose and that vision to your team members, they will get on board and they're going to be excited about coming to work, because they know it's not just about answering the phone and, making appointments, making sure patients come into the office or whatever their job is. They know that this is about making the world a better place, or whatever the vision is for your brand. So that is one thing that is really important. It's also important that everybody's on the same page, right? Everybody knows what the goal is, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. What are our commitments? What are we committed to doing every day? It's not just important you know that. Everybody has to know that. And then obviously the core values are important. And they're not just pretty words you want to put on your website. Those are things that come across to your patients or to your customers through the actions you take. And not just you, but everybody that experiences, or everybody that is part of the experience, or part of the patient experience, everybody that has contact with your patients or with your customers. So use these brand essence elements during your trainings, and also on a regular basis during meetings with your team. Like, I don't know if you do them weekly or quarterly or monthly or whatever you do it. Go over those and discuss how you can implement, how you can implement those values, for example, and involve your team with that too. Have them make suggestions. And then next time, you can take notes in your Google document and document what they say, like other sample behaviors, for example. You can add them to the next version of this. So this is your Google document that you have is meant to be a living, breathing document. So you can always add new ideas there. And then when you have enough that warrant a new version of this printed one or your PDF, then we create a new one. But this is how you want to use this. Pick a value every week that you want to implement and say, okay, this week we're going to focus on, one of those values, and see how we can do that as a team. So this is what this part is about. And what is also important, so the second part, the brand essence is important for, is it's a decision-making tool too. So it can be really helpful for you as the decision maker of the business, or the owner of the business, to use it when big business decisions land on your table, on your desk. So you can always go over this and think about that new product you might want to include, or a new service, or a new marketing strategy maybe that you're trying to employ. You can always run it through the filter of your brand essence and think about, does that get me closer to my vision that I have for my business? Does it align with the core values that we set for our business? And that will help you make certain business decisions. That's just, that's sort of like a business filter, really. There are obviously other things you need to consider when making business decisions, but that is one of them. And if everything being equal, you can run it through the filter of your brand essence and see, okay, does it get me closer to my vision? Does it align with our purpose? And does it align with our values? So that's the first part. Obviously, the positioning strategy helps us knowing our customers better, knowing our patients better. So when we create content to try to engage them, we can create content specifically for these people, knowing their pain points, knowing their desires and their fears. And there are actually studies that show having images of the people you're trying to communicate to around when you create content will help you create better content. So maybe have the book open or hang some images of patients into your office space where the content is created. Talk to your VA or your copywriter about this. There is evidence that seeing the people that you're trying to help actually helps you communicate better to them when you create content. So keep that in mind. That's why we have the images. That's why we have the descriptions. Just getting into the headspace of knowing who they are and how you would communicate to them really helps. So that's the customer or patient. Then, knowing your competition isn't necessarily that important on a day-to-day basis, but just keeping an eye on them and seeing if they're changing anything. Are they adding new services, or are they, maybe going through a rebrand, or maybe they're moving locations. So it's just good to keep an eye on it and take note in your Google Doc if anything happens there. Maybe a new competitor moves to town or close to your business. Maybe there's a new service offered, maybe indirect. It's all things that we want to consider and make sure that our brand still works in that market space. And, knowing your differentiator is just a really important thing anyways, but we use this information in our core message framework. So it's just good to know this, but, as a tool, it's represented in the core message framework. So we don't necessarily need to worry about this right now. Now, as a tool, the brand persona is really important because, again, when you're creating content, or even when you're getting in the mood to meet a new patient, for example, or just get ready for office, you can read over this, or even just having the image printed out again, and reading over the vocabulary to remind yourself, like, how do I need to show up for our patients? How do they want me to show up? Maybe my personality is a little bit more outgoing, but they're actually more, we figured this out. Like, what type of person do they want us to show up as? Do they want more of a sage, or more of a ruler, for example, or more of a jester, or more of a lover? So try to remind yourself of what type of person they want you to be, and just try that out. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to pretend to be somebody else, but try to use the tools we created to make a deeper connection with them. Keep in mind your tone of voice. We figured all this out based on the archetype we figured out for your brand. So, don't joke around if they're not into it. Don't be too formal if they want somebody warm, or maybe they're into the formal thing and, you need to dress up a little bit instead of dressing down. So this is what this is for. And maybe you as a business owner know all this, but use those tools to help your team members communicate as well. So if you figured out that formality is really important to them, if one of your front desk people shows up in flip-flops and shorts and a tank top, then you can have a talk to them and say, look, this is our brand persona. This is how we need to show up. This is what we know from a neuroscience standpoint. This is how our audience wants us to show up. Okay, so you can communicate this with them. You can remind them, look at this picture. You don't even read all the text. Look at this picture. You know, how do we want to show up for them? This is like a visual representation. Are we more playful or more serious, more friendly or authoritative? This is like a summary, a visual summary of the brand persona. You know, read over those characteristics every once in a while. This is something you can use during a team training. You know, if you have like regular team meetings, you can go over this as well. How can you implement that brand persona a little bit more? And then obviously tone of voice is important for content creation online, on your website. You know, if you work with a copywriter, they need to know this, but also in everyday interactions, you know, the whole experience of your patients, you know, it can be changed by the words you use and how you describe things. So, you know, we have the vocabulary in there. We have useful phrases in there. You can read over the brand interview and remind yourself, oh yeah, this is how they talk. And another way you can use this brand interview is when you're interviewing new team members. So if you're looking to hire somebody, you can ask them some of those questions and see if their personality already aligns with your brand personality. Then they don't have to pretend anything, right? So again, if everything else is equal, find the people that already match your brand persona a little bit more. So you can use this brand interview for that. And obviously you can also use it for guiding them, you know, like we're trying to show up a little bit more like this. Now, the core message framework and the storytelling framework, they really help us to communicate to our audience depending on where they're at on their journey. So we created the audience journey, right? So from the existing world before they have a problem all the way to their new world without a problem again. Problem solved, right? Now, before you create any content, whether it's a video or it's an ad or just a social media post, you need to figure out who are you creating that content for? What stage of the journey are they on? So let's say maybe they're at meeting the guide, but they haven't really made taken the next step yet, right? They don't know yet if they really, it sounds good what you're doing, they're pretty impressed, they love, you know, what you're sharing online, for example, or they've read some testimonials, but they're still stuck. Like they're having objections and they're not ready to move into care with you, for example. So you figure that out. Okay, this is the person I'm talking to today. And then you can read through this and figure out, okay, there's different micro stories we figured out, different parts of this bigger story. And, you know, grab one of those micro stories and use it as a frame to create a story around that. What is this? What do you have to communicate to the person in this situation that helps them move a little bit further, either within that stage or even to the next stage? What do they need to hear from you? So we have some keywords there. And when it comes to objections, we also included the main objections that people have and then arguments that we can bring up to disperse those objections, right? So first figure out the micro story you want to use, or, you know, find a new one from the main story. And then you want to figure out, okay, now that I know I want to talk to the people about their objections, or they need to hear, you know, my arguments, let's go back to the core message framework and figure out, okay, which of those core messages do we need to communicate now? Obviously, they need to hear our arguments about the objections they're having, but they might also need to hear our key difference again, what makes us different from our competitors, right? Or there are other options that they're having in the market. But the secondary core message might be really important at this point as well. If we're sharing something about our vision, what we're trying to build here with our business, that it's not just about, you know, making money and, you know, one person, that it's about a bigger picture, or we're communicating some of our core values, that might also resonate with them and might just be that one thing that convinces them to take action and, you know, call for an appointment or whatever you want them to do. So first figure out what stage of the journey they're on. What are you trying to communicate? Find a micro story, and then find a core message that you want to communicate that matches that situation they're in. If they already know about you, you're not going to communicate who you're serving. They already figured this out. They already figured out that, you know, you can help them if they're on the later stages of the journey. They might already know, you know, the key benefits and, you know, the difference and all those things. So if they're a little bit further along, you might want to communicate the secondary core message a little bit more. While somebody that's at the very beginning of the journey, it's the first time they hear anything about you, you have to make sure that they know that you can help them, what you do, and how you're different. Okay? So that's what the core message framework and the storytelling framework are all about. And then the last part, or your tagline, hook, and intro. Actually, so your tagline you use as a tagline whenever necessary. The hook is something that you can use in any communication, kind of as a little, it's sort of like a tagline too, I guess. You know, while you wouldn't use your tagline in every communication, you know, social media post or whatever, but the hook is something you could use every once in a while. Just throw it in, you know. And the introductions, as I've described before, is a way of helping your team members and yourself to continue or establish a conversation. So if somebody asks you, so what do you do? Those are some talking points that you can bring up. So the conversation continues, right? So instead of saying, oh, I'm a chiropractor, and then letting them fill in the blanks and figure out, you know, what they know about chiropractic and what that could mean about what you do, you maybe start with something, you may be starting with something else and communicate, you know, how you help people and what your vision is a little bit more maybe. So it might be easy for you, and you might already have certain scripts that you're using for yourself, and we're just giving your team members also scripts to use, or maybe not even scripts. Like, we don't want them to, you know, just read or learn this word by word and then just, you know, copy it every time they meet somebody. We just want to give them some general talking points so they stay on brand and they know what we're trying to communicate when somebody asks us about what we're doing. And then the brand style guide, obviously, you know, is something that you use when you create visual content. So you can share this with, you know, anybody that creates content for you, your virtual assistant, or, you know, somebody that builds a website for you, somebody creating social media content. You can also share this with photographers or videographers, for example, that create videos and photos for you. You know, somebody coming into your office to take headshots or taking pictures of your office. You can show them what image style, you know, what your color palette is, obviously, and then how that translates into an image style, for example. So if you show this to a photographer, they should be able to match this look and feel and create something that is on brand, that you can then use, you know, in any of your social media content, you know, images to use, and also on your website. So, you know, that's what the brand style guide is for. Defining your brand fonts, how to use them, you know, what to do with the color, with the images, what images not to use as well, just making it clear, you know, those are our colors, this is the look and feel we're going for. Don't use, even this is a nice image, it's not on brand for us because that pink is just not our color, right? And that is pretty much how you use your brand master guide.